Hi there, and welcome to this day in history for February 12th. February 12th is the 43rd day of the year in the Gregorian calendar, with 322 days remaining to the end of the year, 323 in leap years. Last week, on the 7th, as I recall, we talked about the word cousin, which means to trick or deceive someone or to gain by such trickery. In discussing the word cousin, we also mentioned the word cousin in comparison. So today we'll talk about the word cousin. This cousin is a noun that means a child of one's uncle or aunt, a relative descended from one's grandparents, or a more remote ancestor by 2 or more steps and in a different line. Cousin may also refer to a kinsman or a relative, like a collateral blood relative more remote than a brother or sister. Sometimes you'll see the word cousin used to describe someone who is associated with or related to another, like a counterpart, not necessarily related by blood, as in, rural children deserve as good an education as their city cousins get, or as a term for someone regarded as ethnically or culturally related, like our English cousins. Cousin is another word that has evolved through Middle English, Anglo-French before that, originally from Latin, holding pretty much the same meaning along the way. First known use of the word cousin is in about the 1300s. Cousin. Remember, if you have a word you'd like us to examine in this Word of the Day segment, drop it in the comments. We'll take a look at it. And with that, this is the birthday of 16th President of the United States, Abraham Lincoln, born February 12, 1809. He was born in a one-room log cabin at a place called Sinking Spring Farm in LaRue County, Kentucky. He had an older sister, Sarah, and a younger brother, Thomas, but Thomas died in infancy. The Lincoln family moved to Indiana in 1816 when Abraham was about 7 years old. 2 years later, in 1818, his mother Nancy died from what they call milk sickness. This is way more and completely different from lactose intolerance. The illness called milk sickness was caused by consuming milk, dairy products, or even meat that had been contaminated with a particular poison from a toxic plant called white snake root. Livestock, such as cows, would eat this plant, and the toxin, called trematol, would accumulate in the animal and then be passed along to humans who consumed milk from an animal that had been poisoned in this manner. Anyway, Abraham Lincoln's mother died from this when he was 9 years old. His dad married a widow lady with 3 children of her own named Sarah Bush Johnson when Abraham was 10. As a youth, Abraham Lincoln was what we might think of today as sort of a nerdy kid. He disliked the hard labor associated with farm life to the point that some of his family called him lazy, as he much preferred reading, writing, and what they called ciphering, which was likely figuring out math problems on paper. And he also liked to write poetry. He did not enjoy physical labor, but he loved to read. I can relate. The family moved to Illinois in 1830 when Abraham will have been about 21 years old. Abraham struck out on his own the following year as the family prepared to move again to a new homestead in Illinois. He married Mary Todd in November of 1842 when he will have been about 33. They had 4 sons, 2 of whom died in childhood. Those were difficult times. Abraham Lincoln's love for learning served him well. He became a lawyer and then became active in politics. Eventually, he ran for and became the 16th President of the United States. He served well, saw the country through the war between the states, commonly known as the American Civil War, and was assassinated while in office on May 26, 1865. We've talked about that before in previous episodes. Abraham Lincoln was 56 at the time of his death. While we talked a lot about not very many things today, we certainly have touched upon other things in previous episodes for February 12th, so if you'd like to see what else we've covered in some of those previous episodes for February 12th, I'll leave a link for you in case you'd like to check that out. Now we're going to combine an event that happened on February 12th with music. I don't know that I'd necessarily call this a song exactly, because it's a bit longer than you might hear played on the radio unless you listen to one of those classical stations where they play classical concerts. It was way back in November of 1923. A band leader named Paul Whiteman had held an experimental concert that combined classical music and jazz. It went well, and he was very happy about that. He set his sights on something a little bigger and bolder. He asked American composer George Gershwin if he would write a concerto-like piece for a jazz concert to be played in honor of Abraham Lincoln's birthday. Gershwin declined on the basis that he felt he didn't have enough time to put anything together. But early in January, a newspaper article came out stating that George Gershwin had begun work on a jazz concerto for Whiteman's concert. Yikes. Gershwin called Whiteman on the phone the next morning and said, "What the heck?" He might not have said what the heck. But in this phone call, Whiteman explained that an arch rival of his, Vincent Lopez, was looking to steal the idea of the experimental concert, and they had to hurry, convincing George Gershwin to compose what would become Rhapsody in Blue. Now, bear in mind that he not only had to put something together, but he had to do it soon enough that the orchestra could practice it and become familiar enough with it to perform it on the projected date of February 12th, about 5.5 weeks after he finally agreed to the project. It only took him about 3 weeks to get it written and then to the arranger for orchestrating. Rhapsody in Blue premiered 100 years ago on February 12, 1924, mostly to an audience of creatives and people in the business, music publishers, writers, conductors, composers, musicians, and singers. Interestingly, that opening bit where the clarinet stretches out the notes into sort of a wail is a technique called glissando, and was initially done that way as sort of a joke on Gershwin in an early rehearsal. But he liked it and said, "Yes, let's do it that way, and add as much of a wail as you can." Gershwin played the piano on that original concert and apparently had not actually written all of that out, but improvised the piano solo, at least partially, in that original performance, and then wrote it down afterwards. So we don't really know exactly what that first performance of Rhapsody in Blue sounded like. By the way, I saw references to that young composer when I was doing this research, so I looked it up. George Gershwin will have been about 25 when he wrote Rhapsody in Blue. Pretty remarkable in my book. Rhapsody in Blue was immediately popular. Paul Whiteman's band performed it over 80 times over the next 3 years, and recordings have sold over 1 million copies. Bands and orchestras all over the world have played Rhapsody in Blue over the last 100 years. Rhapsody in Blue, written by George Gershwin. Link in the description. Alrighty, thank you so much for watching. Consider subscribing if you haven't already. Feel free to share this video with a link in your email, messaging, or social media. If you enjoy this series, you can check out the playlist that contains these videos. I'll put a link to that in the description. That description lives on YouTube, so for other platforms, I'll include a link to my blog page that's called No Really. You can also find me on Rumble, BitChute, and Odyssey. All those links in that description. Alrighty, that's all I can think of right now. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time. This is the birthday.
I didn't get that. Could you try again?
I wasn't talking to you. Me and my mouth. John, are you kidding me? Okay, hold on. We got to make that be quiet. You got to read the black part. Hi there, and welcome to This Day in History for, where's your microphone? Okay, we don't want to say the same thing twice. Get your microphone. What is it with you and this microphone? Okay, here we go. Okay, we are still recording. That's great. Okay. How about that? We'll have a lot to edit today. Cacophony is a sound Cacophony is a noun that you got to read it the right way. Let's start over. It's 8 o'clock, so all of the reminders are going to be dinging. I forgot to turn those off. Okay, stop it. It's 8 o'clock. Don't alienate people who can be helpful to you. Flinging happiness all over the place. Alrighty, back to work. I think we got it this time.